Most women, most men, and even a lot of self-identified feminists cannot comprehensively explain what feminism is. Not its history, not its origins, not how it changed from one wave to the next. To remedy that, I continue with my series, Mansplaining Feminism. Today we get into the first wave, but to make sense of where it starts, we need to go back to where the story left off. Last time we ended around the year 1792. Alain de Gouges had just written the Declaration of the Rights of Woman and of the Female Citizen. Mary Wollstonecraft had just published a Vindication of the Rights of Woman. But just as the woman question started to pick up the pace, something happened. Many historians point to the one specific event as the official start of the first wave of feminism. The Seneca Falls Convention in New York in 1848. But wait a second, 1848? But that is a 56-year gap from 1792. Why did it take the woman question more than half a century to finally develop into something that could later be called a wave? Oh, that's an interesting story not many know about. Because in those years, feminism almost died, but then came back through a very unexpected door. Let me explain. First, in 1793, Alain de Gouges was sent to the guillotine, the third woman guillotined during the Terror, after Charlotte Corday and Marie Antoinette. It is worth noting, though, that she was mainly executed not for advocating for women's rights, but rather for sedition, political opposition to Robespierre and his government. 4 years later, in 1797, Mary Wollstonecraft dies from complications of childbirth. A year later, her husband, William Godwin, published a well-meaning memoir that revealed her unconventional life, affairs, and illegitimate child, attempts to unalive herself. And in that era, that was more than enough to ruin a woman's reputation. Her name became something you couldn't cite in polite society for decades, and her ideas became toxic by association. This actually slowed feminism thought significantly. The irony is that the child who was born in 1797, the childbirth that led to Mary Wollstonecraft's death, was none other than Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, later known simply as Mary Shelley, one of the most famous women writers in history. You may know her as the author of the Gothic novel Frankenstein. For more than a century, the woman who is now considered one of the founding mothers of feminism was known simply as the mother of Mary Shelley, a woman who wrote Frankenstein. So by the end of the 18th century, the two biggest voices of early feminism were gone. One executed for politics, another discredited posthumously. And then it gets worse for the women's movement. In 1799, Napoleon takes power in France. 5 years later, in 1804, the same year he declared himself an emperor, he introduces his legal code. And this part is often forgotten. After all that revolutionary talk about liberty and equality, the Napoleonic Code locked married women into a strongly patriarchal legal structure. It did not invent female legal dependence from nothing, but it reinforced it very clearly. The husband was the head of the family, the wife owed obedience. Married women were treated less like independent legal adults and more like legally dependent persons. In many cases, they couldn't sign contracts, control major property decisions, take legal action, or work independently without their husband's authority. And because Napoleon's empire spread, this legal model spread with it, directly in some places, indirectly in others. So much of continental Europe entered the 19th century with this baseline. Rights were expanding, citizenship was changing, but married women were still legally dependent. At the same time, in the early 1800s, a new ideology rises in the US and UK. It's called the cult of domesticity, or separate spheres. The idea was simple. Men belong in public life, work, politics, business. Women belong in the home, family, morality, raising children. On paper, it sounded like respect. Women were praised as moral guardians of the home. In practice, it locked women out of public life even more firmly than before. So if you stop the story around 1830, feminism looks dead. The founders are gone or discredited, the laws are worse, the culture is more restrictive. You'd think the whole thing was over. But something else was happening at the same time. And this is the part most people don't tell you.